radio studios of WDBO in sunny Orlando, Florida, here's talk radio host Joe Kelly's Behind the News podcast, where Joe and his listeners and guests discuss the most important issues of the day, plus the crazy and bizarre stories of the infamous Florida man. Here's Joe Kelly.
Honestly, I've never heard a compliment so aggressive before. It just kind of freaks me out a little bit. Hey, we have a couple of items of breaking news right as we come on the air tonight. NBC News is reporting that Georgia prosecutors are on track to indict Rudy Giuliani. So there's something to ponder. I love this breaking news and how this is written. And I'm a student of the English language, and I love to read how people parse things. And this was a breaking news from one of the major network news organizations, and it reads: Justice Department asks judge to keep Mar-a-Lago search warrant affidavit sealed to, quote, protect the integrity of an ongoing law enforcement investigation that implicates national security. Well, when it says the Justice Department asks a judge, what they're leaving out is they're leaving out that Merrick Garland has asked a judge. And what they're leaving out really is that Joe Biden is the one who's asking a judge to keep Mar-a-Lago search warrant affidavit sealed. So Joe Biden doesn't want the world to see the search warrant affidavit to search Mar-a-Lago down in Palm Beach. If there's one thing we've learned, to not trust elected leaders, and I don't trust any of them with any stripes. The D's, the R's, or anything in between, they're all liars. And we have hit a fevered pitch here in our government lying to us constantly. And for the Biden Justice Department to ask to keep the search warrant affidavit sealed, to me is laughable. I mean, if you're going to go to the great step of raiding a former president's home, at the very least, you can explain how you got to that process, how you got there. All right. So you can hit me up at 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the free WDBO app. A couple of personal anecdotes I want to share with you. I was at the Target in Sodo yesterday in south of downtown. You know, the Target there with the parking garage, the 2 stories, and you have to put your cart on the little conveyor belt and it goes up. I love that. But I'm sitting there at the Target yesterday, and my wife, Ronnie Sue, is shopping with her adult daughter. They're doing some grocery shopping. And honestly, I thought, I'm just going to go sit this one out. So I went over to the Starbucks there at the Target in Sodo. And as I'm just sitting there minding my own business, I'm watching this guy, and his behavior catches my attention. I'm watching this guy who has taken 2 grocery carts full of groceries, full of items. He had 2 full carts, and he goes over to one of the closed checkout lines, and he starts bagging his groceries at a closed cash register, and then he walks out. He just walks out. Now, from what I observed, this man didn't pay a dime for his groceries. Now, I should also point out that he was a black man. And of course, through my mind runs all of those episodes where white people have called the cops on black people doing absolutely normal, law-abiding things. And of course, that's on my mind as I'm watching this guy bagging groceries that, from what I saw, he didn't pay for. So, and he walks out right past me with pulling 2, he's pushing one cart, pulling another. He's walking out to his car with 2 full grocery carts that he bagged and that I did not see him pay for. And then I thought to myself, all right, now, if I was a quote-unquote Karen, what would I do? Oh, I'm sure I'd run after him. I'm sure I'd yell at him. I'm sure I would attempt to detain him until the police showed up, blah, 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 blah. Not what I did, though. It's not what I did. Hang on. I'll get to what I did coming up in a moment. So if you're just joining us, I watched a guy as he bagged his groceries at a closed checkout stand at Target. and then just walk out. I didn't see him pay for anything. And I am not one to jump to conclusions. I always assume that people know what they're doing and that they're probably doing the right thing. Maybe I am overly accommodating to people in thinking that their intentions are good, and that was my assumption with this guy. But I was still curious, and as he walked out, I started video recording him because what I thought was his behavior was so curious, that he's bagging his own groceries and he's not paying for them. And I kind of looked around at some of the other people to see, like, am I the only one who's watching this? Am I the only one who sees this? And I believe that I saw some other people similarly looking at him thinking, what is that guy doing? And after he left the store, I still sat there in the little Starbucks there at the Target, and I thought to myself, I wonder what that guy was doing. And I wonder if I should say something to someone. So I decided, all right, I'm gonna stand up, stretch my legs. I know the ladies were still shopping. So I saw a young lady in a Target security shirt, and just quietly I said, hey, I just saw something kind of weird, and I wanted to ask you about it. And I explained to her, I saw this guy bagging groceries over here at a closed checkout, and then he just walked out with two. And she theorized, and she was real sweet, and she was like, oh my gosh, let me find out. And she theorized that what I had seen was the man had likely used the self-checkout lanes, which were the next row over, I should point out. The closed checkout line where he was bagging his groceries was one line away from the self-checkout stands. And what she had theorized was the man was using the self-checkout, but he went over to the closed aisle to bag his groceries so as to not block the self-checkout lanes. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. All right. So she went and checked with the self-checkout clerk, and she said, hey, did that guy come through here a few minutes ago and buy 2 carts worth of groceries? And they're like, oh, yeah, he sure did. And so I concluded I put this up on Facebook, and I concluded it by saying, I hope that hardworking man has had a productive and blessed day, and I'm sure glad that I didn't jump to conclusions. You know, so many other people might have looked at him and jumped to conclusions, and I'm not patting myself on the back for not jumping to conclusions. I mean, I did jump to a conclusion in that what I saw him doing struck me as curious, and I did start recording it, but I did not turn him in or attempt to detain him or call him names or anything else like that. And frankly, I think that's something that's missing from our society is minding your own business, and which is what I did until he left, and then I just was, at that point, just more curious than anything else. 844-580-WDBO, how would you have handled a similar situation? Would you have similarly thought it was kind of curious? This guy's bagging his own groceries in front of a cash register that's closed and nobody is manning it. 844-580-WDBO, or use the open mic in the WDBO app. If you're just joining us here on Orlando's News and Talk, I'm Joe Kelly at Talk Radio Joe. My number is 844-580-WDBO, 844-580-9326. The Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, now asks a judge to keep the Mar-a-Lago search warrant affidavit sealed to protect the integrity of an ongoing law enforcement investigation that implicates national security. Well, that is awfully convenient for the Biden DOJ to say that.
Hey, Joe, I'll make it easy for you. Why did they do that? Because they don't want him to run. They know that he will dismantle them the first chance he gets. They will do anything to keep him from running, including arrest him.
Right, and that's the same reason why they are waiting until September. As we get closer to November, the midterm elections, we're waiting until September before the January 6th committee starts back up again and has more hearings. Now, this is Governor Ron DeSantis has been leaving the state to campaign for others since he is pretty much a shoo-in to win re-election. Certainly in the primary, he's not contested in the primary. But Governor DeSantis talking about the raid at Mar-a-Lago.
These agencies have now been weaponized to be used against people that the government doesn't like. and you look at the raid at Mar-a-Lago, and I'm trying to remember, maybe someone here can remind me about when they did a search warrant at Hillary's house in Chappaqua, when she had a rogue server and she was laundering classified information. I don't remember them doing that. I do remember them manufacturing a false conspiracy theory about Russia collusion.
Now, it's interesting how CBS couches this. They say that maybe DeSantis, he may be doing this as in defending Donald Trump. He may be doing this for crass political reasons because he knows in order to win a Republican primary, you've got to win the base. Interesting that they see politics there when all the rest of us just see bad behavior from the politician that currently occupies the White House. I mean, that's the bad behavior, and particularly in that they're hiding the search warrant affidavit and they don't want anybody else to see that. I mean, that to me is just it's laughable. On its face. Now, we also have some open mics and comments about the man that I saw at Target over the weekend. I was like, is that guy stealing or is that guy not stealing? And I jumped to conclusions by wondering to myself, is that guy stealing food? But I didn't jump to conclusions to the point at which I sought to confront that guy as perhaps and again, forgive me for all the nice, sweet, and kind Karens out there, but as a Karen, I wasn't going to be a male Karen. What is a male Karen, by the way? Would it be like a Kirk, maybe? I don't know what it is.
I don't know what you did, but when I see people do that, I think that they are those green cart people at Publix. Also, if you were to try to call the cops on me, and I'm at, let's say, BJ's, I'm probably going to kick you in the back of the head because to avoid those super long lines, we actually scan all our items and we pay for them on our phone.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts there. First, you said green card. I'm going to assume you mean the EBT cards, because a green card is not something that one would use at a grocery store, but an EBT card, or what they used to be called food stamps that are now put on credit cards, that perhaps is what you're referring to. And then with regards to BJ's Wholesale, and I don't have a BJ's membership, but I do have a membership at Sam's Club, and I do the exact same thing at Sam's Club. I do not like standing in line, and when I do go to Sam's Club, invariably I'm only going to buy 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 items, 2, 3, 4, 500 items. Now, I only buy a couple of things, and I do the exact same thing. They both have apps, evidently. I know Sam's Club does, but you're telling me BJ's does as well. But they both have apps that allow you to scan the items as you put them into your cart so that you don't have to stand in line at the checkout stand, and you can, now, of course, you can't bag your groceries or bag your items at Sam's Club. I don't know if you can at BJ's. But at Sam's Club, you can't. So you'd have to, find boxes or whatever, just put them in your cart. But you're still going to get checked as you exit. You're going to get checked for your receipt as you exit, and they don't check for receipts as you exit Target. They do at Sam's Club. Presumably they do at BJ's. They do at Best Buy and some others, but that is not something that they regularly do at Target. And by the way, if anybody wants to see the video of what I saw, you'll find it on, just look for Talk Radio Joe on Instagram or on Facebook, and you'll be able to see that. And then today, I also went outside. I like to walk around the radio station every afternoon, kind of after my anchor shift and then before this show. And I like to just go outside, clear my head. Sometimes I will walk and meditate, and I'll pray, and I'll take a couple scriptures with me, and I'll walk around, and I'll just kind of ruminate and meditate on some scripture. And truth be told, every time I go out for a walk, I'm looking for snakes. I don't know why, but I have this, it's not a fixation. I just think snakes are cool. And that is one that has been a major disappointment in Florida as far as I'm concerned. I really thought there would be more snakes. Now, every time I say that, people are like, oh my gosh, I see snakes every day. And clearly I'm not going to the right place to see snakes. So if anybody knows where I could go to see, random wild live snakes, I would love to know where they are. There's a couple of Facebook groups that I subscribe to, and they're basically snake identification groups, and they're, for Florida snakes. And here in Central Florida, statewide, we have 6 venomous snakes, but here in Central Florida, we only have 4. So in my mind, all you have to do is be able to identify the 4 venomous snakes we have here in Central Florida. And once you identify those 4 snakes, once you know what those 4 snakes look like, then you're pretty well safe that you're not going to be in danger by the other snakes. Even if you look at a snake and don't recognize it, but you do recognize it's not one of our 4 venomous ones, then I am oftentimes will be inclined to pick up a snake, or in this case, I saw a Cuban tree frog outside the radio station, which I gave it a good poke. But the Cuban tree frogs are invasive species, and you're supposed to kill them when you see them. And I don't know to what extent new residents know that. I don't know to what extent old residents know that. But if you see a Cuban tree frog, it is your duty as a Floridian to kill it. That having been said, I don't kill Cuban tree frogs. I don't kill animals. I don't kill animals. If I knew for a fact I was going to use it and maybe eat it, I would be okay with that. But just for the sake of killing an animal because he's in the wrong state, sorry, I'm wimpy like that. I just can't do it. Hit me up, 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326, or use the open mic in the free WDBO app. So I was out walking around the radio station, and I saw a frog climbing up the front window, and I'm not as good at identifying frogs as I am at identifying snakes, but I'm reasonably sure it's a Cuban tree frog. And Laurel, you remember when Daryl worked here, and do you remember that time that he killed the Cuban tree frog?
Oh, yes, and still makes me sad.
I know.
And talk about it. Oh.
And there somehow a Cuban tree frog got into the newsroom, and we didn't have a phone book, but Daryl had, because no one has phone books anymore, but there was something large, and all of a sudden there was this loud wham, and I looked, and he had squished the frog, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. But I mean, Daryl is right. You're supposed to kill the tree frogs.
Not like that, humanely.
Right.
But
There is a humane way that you're supposed to kill the Cuban tree frogs. But squashing them with a heavy book is not one of them. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to apply benzocaine to their back or to their tummy. Benzocaine is something you'll find at the drugstore. It's typically an ointment or a gel that is used to treat burns, or a toothache gel, that kind of stuff. It's like a painkiller, kind of like lidocaine is. And so you put it on the tummy or the back of the tree frog. Then you put the frog in a Ziploc bag, and then you put the Ziploc bag in your freezer. And that way the frog will go to sleep and will never wake up, and that is the humane way. But then you've got a freezer full of frozen dead frogs, which is gross. And then I honestly, I was looking for audio on how to kill a tree frog, and then I found this guy's video.
These are the Cuban tree frogs I caught tonight. I went out about an hour.
Here's a guy who goes by the Bio Blitzer on YouTube.
Some of these are.
And he's showing this big Ziploc bag full of about a half a dozen or so living Cuban tree frogs.
Like this one right here. The males never get anywhere near this size. And looks like she's got.
So he skips the benzocaine step. He puts them all, he goes out and rounds them up every night. I mean, he goes out every night looking for Cuban tree frogs to kill.
that's really dedicated.
It is very dedicated. I know. I can't even imagine. But he doesn't put the benzocaine on it. Instead, he says he puts it in the refrigerator first so that they fall asleep because of the refrigerator, and then the freezer kills them. But I honestly don't know. If the benzocaine is not put on it, could they not come back to life coming out of the freezer? Don't iguanas freeze up and then come back to life?
100% legal to capture them and kill them.
Yeah, it is. It is legal to capture and kill tree frogs, the Cuban tree frogs.
Half an hour so they fall asleep. And then I'll put them in the freezer after that once they're asleep to actually kill them.
Makes it sound so gentle, doesn't it? We should do that with our death row inmates. We should just rub some benzocaine on their tummies or on their backs, and then put them in a Ziploc bag, and then put them in the refrigerator so that they fall asleep, and then put it into the freezer so that they die. Do you think that I mean, if that's the humane way to kill frogs, is that also a humane way to kill people?
I don't think so.
Maybe not. Okay. And then I threw out the question of what you call a male Karen, and we've got differing opinions on that one too.
I believe a male Karen is called a Ken.
A Ken. Yeah, that kind of checks out. I could see that.
Hey, love you, show. A male Karen is still called a Karen. Yeah, we still call them Karens.
Huh, all right. And based upon what I had seen at that Target, I'm not alone in thinking that perhaps somebody was stealing something.
I would have thought the same thing had I witnessed someone taking items that they put in a shopping cart and using a checkout line that was not in service and not a self-checkout, that they were cleverly stealing these items. Because as a white guy, I did that nonsense when I was a teenager at Miller's Department Store on Orange Blossom Trail about 40 years ago. Okay, case closed.
That guy just confessed to a crime on the radio?
What's the statute of limitations for shoplifting?
What is the statute of limitations in Florida for shoplifting, for stealing something? All right, Zach is joining us in Oviedo. Hey, Zach, you're on WDBO. Thanks for calling.
Okay, here's what happened to me. Now, the Cuban tree frog, it's like an invasive species, so you're supposed to kill them.
Right.
Well, I cooked up these 2 steaks on my my table out on my patio.
Okay.
And I'm going in and eating them. I come back out to clean out the grill after it cooled off.
Yep.
And one was stuck to the outside of the grill and fried instantly.
You know what's...
You could see how he try to pull up off the grill real quick.
Right.
And he's a crispy critter.
Oh, boy. Listen, that's kind of the interesting thing about those frogs. And the very first time ever I saw a Cuban tree frog in Florida was in my grill. And they love tights. They're like cats. They like tight spaces. And one of the things that makes them destructive, beyond eating all of the good tree frogs, and they also eat insects, which is good, but they tend to crawl into tight spaces like your barbecue grills. They'll get into the gas lines. They'll crawl into the electrical conduits. Electricians have problems with them because they'll open up a electrical conduit box somewhere and they'll find a fried out Cuban tree frog, and that was their problem, and that's why they got to go repair everything. I mean, they cause a lot of damage in electrical systems and gas lines and other things that they crawl into. Yeah, and mice. Right. So you killed that one not deliberately. That's right.
He killed himself.
That's right.
He jumped on the wrong grill.
It sounds so much like that the old adage of if you put a frog in a boiling vat of water, he jumps right out, but if you put him in cold water and turn the heat up, he'll just slowly boil to death. In your frog's case, he seemingly burned.
He got nuked.
Yeah, he got burned to death real fast, it seems. Thank you so much, Zach. I'm glad you called. 844-580-WDBO, 844-580-9326. I will never forget the time I was mowing my yard in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'd lived there for 5 or 6 years, and I'd never seen anything like this in my life. I'm mowing the grass, and as I'm looking down at the grass, I see the biggest tarantula I've ever seen in my life just walking across my lawn. I had no idea that tarantulas were native to Oklahoma, that they had tarantulas. I'd lived there for like 6 years and no one even said anything to me. No one's like, hey, welcome to Oklahoma. By the way, there's tarantulas here. Like when you come to Florida, at least they say, there's alligators and mosquitoes, so just be careful. And there's herpes-infected monkeys and there's all kinds of things. But nobody said there's tarantulas. And so I called with a cell phone back into the house, and I was like, you got to come out here and see this. And my now ex-wife was like, you've got to kill it. Just kill it. And I'm like, I can't kill a tarantula. I mean, if nothing else, they're so big and meaty looking that it would make a nasty popping sound, I'm certain, when you kill it. And I just, would you kill a tarantula? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Laurel.
I don't like them, and I would go running screaming. I wouldn't go anywhere near them.
So you wouldn't kill it. You would, but so I had to relocate it. I had to promise my then wife that I would relocate it, and I drove it about 3 miles away in my car I drove it about 3 miles away, and I released it into a rock pile next to a children's playground.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And then one time, I caught an alligator snapping turtle, and this was that was also in Oklahoma, and they are. I think you've all seen an alligator snapping turtle. They're vicious, they're nasty looking, they're scary looking. I mean, the horror movies are made of alligator snapping turtles. And I don't know, I think they're protected of some sort here in Florida. I don't know if they're protected or not in Oklahoma, but when I saw one of those in Oklahoma, I pulled it out of the pond, which is in our backyard, and I didn't want alligator snapping turtles to take hold and grow in my pond. Not my pond, but a neighborhood pond that was behind our house. And so I had already caught the alligator snapping turtle because it went after my fishing line. So I had accidentally snagged it. And so I pulled it out of the water, and I had to, find a way to get it off the hook safely. And then I had to relocate it. And boy, putting an alligator snapping turtle in your car in the front seat of your car, it's like, hey, buddy, let's go for a ride. And I drove in pretty much the same place I dropped off the tarantula, over by the kids' playground, because what could possibly go wrong there, right? Yeah. So, and then I had something here in Florida. I had something digging up my front yard, and I was real sure that it was a gopher tortoise, which is absolutely a protected species. And I even contacted the Florida Wildlife Commission, and I sent them pictures. I had 2 holes that were being dug in my yard. I had a hole in the front yard and a hole in the backyard, and something was digging up these holes. And they were both right under the hedges, which means whatever it was, they were tearing up the root system, and I knew it was going to be causing all kinds. Well, I sent pictures of both of the burrows, not donkeys, but burrows, the holes that were dug by these animals. And they said, the agents with the FWC said, beyond any shadow of a doubt, the one that's in your front yard is a gopher tortoise, and you are not allowed to relocate it. You're not allowed to molest it. You're not allowed molest it as in touch it. You're not allowed to do anything with it. You just and I said, well, it's destroying my front yard. It's destroying my hedge. And they said, good news is they don't typically stay in the same place for really long periods of time, and that at some point they'll move their nest elsewhere. Oh, okay, thanks. And it was quite some time before the activity around that hole stopped. But in the backyard, when I showed them the burrow that was dug there, they said that is absolutely not a gopher tortoise, and that's something else. That's probably a rodent of some sort. So I had a trap, and I set up a trap right next to the hole in the backyard. And honestly, by the next day, I had a cat, a kitty cat. I had a cat that ended up in the trap, and it's a living trap. It's not one of those bear claw traps where they get their legs stuck in and anything. So I let the cat go, and I put the trap out again one more night, and I put sardines in it. And the next morning, a very nasty and perhaps rabid opossum. I found an opossum stuck in my trap, and same thing as the alligator snapping turtle, same thing as the tarantula. I relocated it. If I knew where a children's playground was nearby where I was at the time, I would have dropped it off there. But I relocated. I had to relocate that. I only deliberately killed an animal one time. I killed a duck once on purpose. Because it was very, very sick. We had bought some ducks to put in the same pond that I was talking about, and they're the Peking ducks, and the Peking ducks are the white ones, like the Aflac duck. Aflac. Those are Peking ducks, and this duck had been attacked, probably by an alligator snapping turtle. And it was part of his leg was torn off, part of his head was, and so I got a gun out and I put that duck out of its misery. It was bad, it was ugly, and I hated it. But that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.